topic, and James Clift is the policy director of the Michigan Environmental Straits of Mackinac is what he wants to talk about, and he's with us right here, right now. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning.
Is that Enbridge pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac, which we could have seen the area where it is by just looking out the window, a ticking time bomb?
We think it is. Been down there for 62 years. And unfortunately, because of things like zebra mussels and things, you don't really get a good look at it and whether or not, where corrosion might be occurring. Noticed a couple of years back that they had kind of been letting it go a little bit. After the Kalamazoo spill, they realized it wasn't even marked as a no-anchor zone. So any freighter could have come along and just kind of torn it up. So in our mind, we really need to be looking forward and say, okay, what's next? Because this risk is not worth it. The Great Lakes are too precious, too important to Michigan to put at this point at this risk.
So what would you? Well, first of all, were you there at the hotel when the protest happened?
I was not.
Okay, and what do you want?
Well, under the Michigan law, there's a law called the Great Lakes Submerged Land Act, and that's the act that the state can proceed under to determine what's the next step. Is the easement for the pipeline, should it continue to exist in the future, or should Enbridge be taking reasonable steps to eliminate this risk to the Great Lakes and figuring out what's a better way to get oil to the refineries that it needs to do?
What would be a solution?
So you can bypass the lakes. There's many other places where we tunnel underwater bodies instead of going through them. Is there some sort of secondary containment structures that could be built around it? The key is that this proceeding would look at what are all the alternatives and decide, is one of those alternatives better than just kind of waiting for a problem to happen some point in the future?
Well, Dan Wyant from the DEQ, according to the article that I'm reading, says that anything that old could spring a leak. True?
Yeah, unfortunately, Enbridge has hundreds of leaks a year in its lines across the country. So the question is what makes this line any different, and why would we expect that this one poses kind of less risk to us moving forward?
If it did leak, what would happen?
Lots of currents, and it depends when it leaked. If it leaked in the winter, when there's ice cover, we may not know about it for a very long period of time, and therefore a lot of impact could occur before we even knew about it. And even if we did know about it, you got 3 feet of ice, there's nothing we could do. We would just have to sit there and wait until spring to try to start to address that type of spill. So we think those are just unreasonable risks that the Great Lakes should not be subject to.
I guess the size of the leak would, but we're talking about a lot of oil going through there?
Yeah, so this is a pipeline that carries 500,000 barrels a day, through this pipeline. So this is a lot of oil. And, they always come back and say, oh, we have these automatic shutoff valves. But, time and time again across the country, down in the Kalamazoo River, there was automatic shutoff valves that they said would shut off, but they went on for 17 hours. Out in California recently, 7 hours before they could shut off a pipeline. They don't have a good history of working and automatically shutting off like the companies say they should.
University of Michigan says if there were going to be an oil spill in the Great Lakes, this would be the worst possible place for it.
Yeah, currents going kind of both ways, lots of movement of water. The oil would be everywhere very quickly.
So are you intrigued to see what this report, which is coming out, in a week or so, will say, and what will happen then?
I'm intrigued, but I'm also, this is a report that's been developed behind closed door, in secrecy. So the public has not seen what's kind of went before the task force commission. So regardless of what they're come out with, we're going to say, well, what's it based on? And that's why we're asking for a public proceeding. Let's have, before the public, let's get the experts up there, talk about what they see as the risk, what they see as the alternatives going forward. We're hoping that the report calls for the immediate proceeding to begin to make sure that we get a plan for what's next. How do we get that pipeline out of the straits?
That would be It sounds like it would be a major investment for Enbridge to come up with some different way to do it, right?
It's going to be a major investment, but we think, the pipeline that's there, been there for 62 years. We think that investment has probably paid off for them pretty well over the years, and we think the next one will too.
Well, let's keep in touch. We appreciate that very much indeed. He is the policy director for the Michigan Environmental Council, James Clift.